Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again, it is Sunday, and that means it's time for the Texas Gun Vault Poll Question of the Week, a weekly vlog that I put out where I ask you, as my viewers and subscribers, about something that deals with guns, gun culture, politics, current events, the news, or something fun like EDC that I want to get your thoughts and opinions on. And the question this week deals with something that recently happened in Florida, and something that I was honestly unaware of until another YouTube channel by the name of Washington Gun Law brought it up. It turns out the agricultural commissioner in Florida, Nikki Fried, who actually is a Democrat and in the past has been pretty anti-gun, filed a lawsuit against the ATF when it comes to the Form 4473 and the people in that state who answer yes that they use marijuana, but because they use it for medicinal or medical purposes and they were prescribed them by a doctor, and saying this is not right. This is a medical treatment that is legal here in Florida and you should not lose your Second Amendment rights. Well, first of all, I was really surprised that she filed the lawsuit because many times anti-gunners are looking for any reason whatsoever to deny you your Second Amendment rights. But I guess she wants to uphold them and help the citizens of Florida. So that got me thinking. I know as a musician and being in both the classical, pop, and jazz world, I see a lot of people that do recreational 420 or pot. Now, I personally do not do it. I don't do drugs of any kind, and I have never been drunk in my entire life. Yes, I do drink. I know some people are going to say you must be some type of teetotaler, and I am not. I actually do drink. I like tequila. I like a number of different vodkas and whiskeys and scotch, and you name it, but I have just never been drunk. I've never been someone that wants to lose control of their faculties, but I do enjoy drinking from time to time because it tastes good and I like the experience. But because so many of my colleagues and friends use marijuana, I am very aware of the proliferation of 420. And I know that people around the country have been changing their minds over the past couple of decades. After all, many states have legalized the medicinal use or the recreational use of marijuana. We've had plenty of time to figure out, no, this is not really a gateway drug. No, this is not a drug that destroys people's lives. But yet the federal government, for some reason, wants to enforce it to the letter of the law and ruin people's lives, and sometimes over small amounts that they're just going to have for personal use. And so as the tide is changing and the philosophy of marijuana is changing, and are these laws really just? Are they needed? Should we be spending all this money on enforcement and ruining people's lives over nonviolent pot offenses? Well, how should it really affect your Second Amendment rights? And what are your thoughts on the subject? So, with all that said, let's dive right into this week's question. Last month, a unique lawsuit in Florida was filed against the ATF and their denial of people who use medical marijuana who answer honestly on the ATF Form 4473 for firearms transfers. Surprisingly, the lawsuit was filed by Florida's agricultural commissioner, who is a Democrat and has made anti-gun statements in the past. Even though the use of marijuana is illegal on the federal level as a Schedule I drug, do you feel there should be an exemption for the use of it when it comes to exercising your Second Amendment rights? Now, ostensibly, I am asking you about the medical use of marijuana, but we all know what that really means. A lot of states that allow for the medical use, they're on the border between using it for recreational use. So let's not hide that fact. Now, this is a question that I want to ask because I know there's some people out there, depending on how you fall on this moral argument, that feel like absolutely nobody should ever own a gun if you are under the influence of any drug at any time. And there's other people that are more libertarian, honestly, like myself, that feel like, well, if you're not infringing upon the rights of others and you're not hurting yourself and hurting others, well, what's the harm? Do I have the right to tell you what to do? I don't think so. But let's go through each one of these answers and let's see what the people of the gun, the viewers of the Texas Gun Vault, have to say on this issue. And with only 626 votes this week, I gotta say, I'm a little bit surprised that I'm getting so few votes because in the past I was always getting over 1,000. Maybe YouTube is just not promoting my polls anymore. But we have, yes, it is a legally prescribed drug by a medical professional, 23%. Yes, because marijuana should be legalized, 45%. No, until marijuana is legalized, the law should be enforced, 12%. No, no one who uses drugs should be allowed to buy or own guns, 12%. And something else, neutral, or I do not care. The results of this poll really don't surprise me. As I've already mentioned, I kind of feel like the culture here in the United States has become very marijuana friendly over the past few decades. We see that marijuana does not destroy people's lives even as much as alcohol does. After all, I have never seen somebody take a bunch of marijuana or smoke a bunch of marijuana or do the edibles and then go out and drive and have a bad accident. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I know people that drink and drive do. I have personally seen how people can get out of control when they drink too much. But all those experiences that I have been around when it comes to people smoking or eating marijuana, I have never seen them get rowdy or cause any trouble. So, as I said, I wonder where people are coming from. And I understand that people's experiences in the past can affect their ideas. I also find that the people of the gun, or the people that are voting on this poll, may come from different political backgrounds and look at things from a different perspective. You know, a lot of times people think that if you're a gun owner, you're part of this monolithic voting bloc, that you must be some type of conservative Republican, and that you go to church every Sunday and you follow this moral code. And that's not necessarily the case. I do know that there are Democrats that are very pro-gun. I know, of course, there's a lot of Republicans that are pro-gun. And then there's people like myself that I'm a libertarian, and I kind of feel like, well, we definitely got to get our fiscal house in order. But when it comes to many social issues like marijuana, well, if you're not hurting anybody, why should I have the moral or the ethical fortitude and say you can't do it because I disagree with it? Well, if you're not hurting me and you're not hurting anybody else, I really can't say anything at all. In fact, I want the government out of my business. Just like when it comes to my Second Amendment rights, well, if I decided in the future, if it became legal to smoke marijuana, I don't want anybody knowing or even asking. It's none of their business. But let's go through each one of these and let's talk about them. First, we have yes, it is a legally prescribed drug by a medical professional. And I think that I agree with this lawsuit 110%. Even if it is not legalized in your state for recreational use, if it is prescribed by a medical doctor, then you should be able to have it and not affect your Second Amendment rights. After all, we are told by many people on the left who are anti-gun that we need to trust the science. And part of the trust the science is trusting your doctor. Go talk to your doctor. And if your doctor thinks that the use of THC is going to help your physical ailment, well, then that's trusting the science. And a lot of times when people use drugs, well, they're going to use them in a prescribed manner. No doctor is going to say, hey, go out and get completely stoned and then go to the range. Well, it's like drinking. Well, as I said, I do drink. I've never been drunk. But if I know that I'm going to the range, I'm not going to drink before going to the range. I'm not going to go to the range or go shooting with somebody that I know has been drinking. I'm going to make sure that everybody is of sound mind and sober. Then after we're done, the guns are back in their cases and they're back in the safe. Yeah, let's crack open a nice bottle of whiskey or scotch or whatever you want to imbibe in. But we can do it in a responsible way. And I feel like people that might be prescribed medical marijuana can do it exactly the same way. Oh, my knee is hurting, or I'm getting over cancer treatment and this helps my nausea. Well, they're going to ingest or smoke marijuana, but I think they can be responsible enough to know, okay, maybe I should not go to the range afterwards. But this also brings up another point. What about using your gun in self-defense? Let's say you're home and you've been partying, or you've had a few too many, but you're in the privacy of your own home. You have not gotten behind the wheel of your car and you just had a good time with friends. And then that night, somebody breaks into your house and you have to use your firearm in self-defense, and maybe your blood alcohol level is a little bit raised. Well, the same thing could happen if you've used a little bit of THC. Should that mean that you should be defenseless in your home just because you had to use a little bit of marijuana for an ailment? Well, I personally don't think so. And I'm glad to see that a lot of people think that's the case as well. Then we have yes, because marijuana should be legalized. And this got the overwhelming majority of votes. And I'm really glad to see that, because I think personally, here in the United States, no matter if you like marijuana, don't like it, don't care, you have to admit that we spend a lot of money and resources on enforcement of low-level, nonviolent drug infractions, where those law enforcement officers and all those resources can go to bigger and more important things like trafficking of human beings, or the people that might be doing violent crimes or robbing banks or terrorism. Instead of spending all this money incarcerating people for these low-level offenses that aren't hurting anybody, we could be doing much more. Now, I also don't want you guys to think that I believe in the legalization of all drugs, but let's talk about marijuana here for just a second. It's literally a plant. It's a plant that can grow in your backyard accidentally, because essentially it's a weed. You know, it goes into your yard as a seed, it grows. You might not even know you have one. It is a very prolific plant. It's everywhere. It's in nature. And just to say, well, this thing that exists in nature, you can't have, and if we catch you with it, we're going to put you away for a long time. How dare you? That's absolutely silly. But when it comes to other drugs, they require refinement and production and other chemicals. And so that is a completely different thing than just smoking a plant or taking the leaves of a plant and putting it in brownies or other edibles and things. That is completely different than, let's say, crack cocaine, which requires a lot more processing. So I'm not a libertarian to the point that all drugs should be legalized. I'm just saying, well, it's pretty obvious that this is not a problem, because let's just be honest, a lot of people in this country do it. We don't have a huge epidemic of problems or violence because people do, and it's a freaking natural plant. That's just how I feel as a libertarian, and I'm glad to see that a lot of people agree with me, and that's probably how I would have voted if I voted in this poll. Then we have no, until marijuana is legalized, the law should be enforced. And you know, this is one of those options that I could vote for if I was in the right mood, because I think people should have to live with the consequences of their own votes. They need to be informed. It's like when Joe Biden was running to be president. He says, I'm going to cut natural gas and oil production here in the United States. And a lot of people are like, whoa, greenhouse gases are going to go away. We're going to save the environment. And then all of a sudden gas was $4.50 and people are like, I can't get to work. Well, you voted for it. Same thing happened with the people of Venezuela when they voted for Hugo Chavez. When he said, I'm going to come in and I'm going to nationalize all these different industries, and people were like, yay, power to the people. And then the entire country went to heck because the government can't run anything, businesses couldn't make any money, and now they're essentially starving under people like Maduro. They live under the thumb of an authoritarian government. Well, guess what? You voted for it. And people told you, if you vote for this, this is going to happen. But I guess people just didn't want mean tweets from Donald Trump, and they would rather have $5 gas, or have a recession coming, or be involved in wars around the world. Maybe they actually want to vote for that, and that's perfectly fine. But a lot of people don't, and they don't realize the ramifications of their votes. And I feel like people should have to suffer until they realize, hey, I don't want to live like this anymore. I'm actually going to get educated, and I'm going to vote the right way. So this is one of those things. It's like, well, because I don't personally use THC or marijuana, I really don't care. But on the other hand, if you do and you get caught and you get in trouble, I'm going to ask, who'd you vote for? Oh, you voted for somebody that is for maintaining the illegality of this substance. Well, don't come to me complaining. I know that's kind of a harsh thing to say, but I think it's really important to have an educated electorate. And we don't here in the United States. People just vote willy-nilly. They'll vote for stupid things because one candidate looks more attractive than the other, or because they have a particular political affiliation, instead of actually looking at what they stand for. It's really kind of scary because a lot of times people that are anti-gun will talk about how dangerous guns are, but there's something, in my opinion, that's way more dangerous than a gun. Your vote. Because you can vote in a tyrant. You can vote in a genocidal maniac. And a lot of people think that can't happen here. Trust me, it can. There's been a lot of civilized societies that have voted that way, and they continually will. And we just have to be vigilant. That's also why we have the Second Amendment. Then we have no one who uses drugs should be allowed to buy or own guns. And I was really surprised by the results of this one. 12%? That's actually quite a lot, especially people that follow my channel. Now, I understand their sentiment, and I'm sure many of the people that voted for this feel like all drugs are bad all the time. Well, a good question is, how do you feel about alcohol or other prescription drugs? After all, there are a lot of prescription drugs that can alter your mind. You know, there's antidepressants. There are other drugs that can have interactions that can make you feel loopy. I'll tell you a story. One time, because I have rheumatoid arthritis, and before I was diagnosed with it, I had a very bad attack in my knee. And my general doctor prescribed a low dose of Tylenol with codeine. And let me tell you, that made me so loopy, I knew I could never take it again. Now, that was a drug that was prescribed by a doctor. I had to call him back up and go, I can't take this anymore because the world feels amazing. Oh yeah, and the houseplants look like they're talking to me. But they weren't talking to me and I knew it, but I was like, okay, this obviously is a drug that I should not be taking. So just because I got prescribed codeine at that one time in my life many years ago, does that mean I should have to give up guns forever and never own a gun? In my opinion, absolutely not. I kind of feel like as time goes on, people are going to discover that maybe there is a true medicinal use for marijuana, and you don't have to participate in it. As I was saying, one of the reasons that I've left the Republican Party is because there's many people in the Republican Party that have this kind of moral stick up their butt. And they're like, well, I believe this, therefore I'm going to enact laws that says you can't do this. Well, if it's not hurting anybody, why do you care? You know, and I know we can go issue by issue on this, okay? But I'm just saying, in general, there's a lot of people out there that feel like drugs are bad. I've been told drugs are bad my entire life, therefore all drugs are bad. And if you use one or have ever used one, you should lose your Second Amendment rights. No, rights are rights. They're human rights. And I don't think the government should be in the business of deciding you don't have a Second Amendment right, well, just because maybe you've been prescribed a drug, or at least do a recreational drug that essentially is harmless. And then finally, we have something else neutral, or I do not care. And I could vote for this one as well, because as I said, I don't use THC at all. It really has no effect on me. And so whether it's legalized or illegal, it doesn't bother me. But I know a lot of people who do, and I don't see their lives being destroyed by it. But for the most part, when it comes to myself, I don't care. But because I'm a libertarian, I believe in fighting for everybody's rights until they infringe upon the rights of others. And I think doing recreational marijuana doesn't really infringe upon the rights of anyone else. So that's my thoughts on all this. So let's dive right into this week's top-rated comments and see what you guys have to say. With our top-rated comment of the week, we have Laser222, who says, I'm curious when the people who voted no one who uses drugs should own guns last took a sip of caffeinated soda or took an ibuprofen Tylenol or used an antihistamine for an allergy or rash. And he's absolutely right. Just because they say marijuana is a bad drug, therefore no. Drugs are drugs. They do affect our body. And that's one of the miracles of modern science. I can tell you, I have rheumatoid arthritis and I take a weekly mild prescription. And man, oh man, does it help me. That drug helps me so much. So maybe if you're getting over like cancer treatment or having to go through chemotherapy, they say that THC can really help with that nausea and make their quality of life so much better. So who am I to say you should lose your right to defend yourself just because you use a drug? Then we have Litzine Zoots, who says, they don't ask people if they consume alcoholic beverages. Consumers utilizing marijuana products should also be left alone regardless of being prescribed by a doctor or not. The U.S. has enough other more serious concerns to occupy bureaucrats and law enforcement. Bingo, 100%. I'm all about enforcing the laws that we have, and we have very serious laws on the books. Like I said, human trafficking. Well, why are we enforcing stupid pot laws when we could be enforcing laws against human trafficking? I think that's a much more reasonable use of our resources and time. Or investigating other crimes like fraud, assault, murder, things where people are getting hurt versus just somebody that has a baggie of a plant that grows in their backyard. To me, it's absolutely ridiculous. Then we have Ethan Hernandez, who says, drug use of any kind should not prohibit someone from owning a gun. The federal government shouldn't have a say. period. And I agree, and this might even be one of those states' rights issues. I think it's better handled at the state level. If California wants to legalize even harder drugs than that, then by all means, go at it. If Colorado wants to just legalize pot, go at it. If other states, like Texas, don't want to legalize anything, well, the voters of that state can decide whether I agree with that or not and what the outcomes of those states decide or not. I'm just saying that it should be a state level thing probably versus an all-inclusive federal government thing. Then we have Wild Bill, who says, I personally do not use it, but I know plenty of firearm enthusiasts who do and are level-headed, successful, and intelligent people. And you know, as I said, as a musician, I know a lot of people that use THC. In my personal life, I know a lot of people who do or have in the past. And a lot of these people are very successful. They're doctors, they're lawyers, and they're also musicians, as I mentioned. People from all walks of life. They have successful careers, they have their lives in order, and it doesn't seem to destroy them like I have seen when it comes to harder drugs. Now, being in the music scene, I have seen people that do harder drugs, unfortunately, and I have seen the negative repercussions of those decisions. But when it comes to pot, I never have, and trust me, I've seen a lot of people use a lot of pot in my musical career. Then we have, finally, Joe Morgan, who says, I believe gun laws and drug laws are bad, should be as wrong to ask someone's medical status, same as if they are armed. Right. Don't ask, don't tell. But remember, just like if you're intoxicated and use a firearm, well, you are going to be held to a higher level of scrutiny. Same thing should be if you are high on THC. And I am okay with that. If you are on marijuana and then take your firearm out and use it, well, there should be a punishment for that, just like if you are intoxicated with alcohol. I'm okay with that. But I think if your guns are locked up, you're not using them, if you want to have a little bit of recreational THC, by all means go at it, just like it would be if you were drinking. So that is a really interesting discussion and the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. I was kind of surprised by some people's answers, but I'm glad to see that a lot of people are thinking pot should be legalized because we're wasting time, resources, and money enforcing these silly laws where our law enforcement officers could be handling bigger and better things. So as I mentioned, that is the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. If you would like to participate in next week's poll, please go to the community tab of my YouTube channel. I will post a link there. And in the description below, go over there and vote, comment, and like other people's comments so we can get the top rated comments of the week. So let me know what you guys think. Do you like my opinions? Did you know that I was a libertarian? Well, I think a lot of you guys did, and it's one of the reasons why I don't always want to vote for a Republican, because they're not always about freedom. I personally am all about freedom until you infringe upon the rights of others. So as I said, that's the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.